Hi beautiful souls, it's Tan here today with another compatibility video. And as I mentioned in my last video, in the soulmate versus moonmate video, that I would do kind of a series of videos on different types of moonmate relationships or soulmate relationships. And the first one I want to talk about is the Plutonic relationship. And then probably I'll do like the Saturnian relationship, Neptunian, Uranian, Jupiterian themed relationships. But we're going to start off with Pluto because Pluto is interesting and we like Pluto, right? In astrology. So if you're in a Platonic relationship, first of all, you're going to have to identify whether the relationship that you're in is a Platonic relationship or not. So first you're going to have to look at your own natal chart, the synastry between you and your partner, and then the composite chart of the relationship with you and your partner. And what you're going to find is if there are hard contacts between the Sun and Pluto, so we're talking about squares or oppositions in your own natal chart, in the synastry, in the composite chart. Squares, oppositions, that is one indicator, okay? But we're looking for a series of things, not just one aspect that's going to show us that it's a Plutonic relationship. So if you have a series of these, then yes, it is. So that's the first thing. If there is any kind of moon contacts, okay? But more so the hard ones, so the square or the opposition between Moon and Pluto, and the in conjunction aspect as well in the natal, synastry, composite, or any aspects, this one is any aspect, between Venus and Pluto. The hard aspects the easy aspects will make it a Platonic relationship, but it will be less forceful, okay? So in the natal chart, synastry, and composite. The hard aspects between Mars and Pluto, squares and oppositions, in the natal chart, synastry, and composite. Okay, those things. And also, if you find that there is Pluto on any of the angles, so Pluto conjunct the ascendant, conjunct the midheaven, conjunct the descendant, conjunct the IC, conjunct like within like 5 degrees conjunction, no more than 5 degrees or maybe, in the natal chart, synastry chart, and the composite chart. And sometimes I find that if you have natal Pluto in the 12th house in your natal chart, then you're more prone to also have to work through some Plutonic issues in a relationship. So any of those indicators, the more you have, the more that the relationship that you're in is a Platonic relationship. And most of the time you'll find that, let's say you have a moon aspect Pluto in your natal chart, you'll see that the moon aspect Pluto can translate into the synastry and then into the composite chart, okay? So that would make that relationship Plutonic. But let's say maybe you have a moon Pluto in your natal, but then in the synastry you have moon Pluto, sun Pluto, Venus Pluto. And then in the composite chart, then you start to have sun Pluto, moon Pluto. That's a Plutonic relationship as well. Planets in the 8th house wouldn't necessarily indicate that you're going to have a Plutonic relationship. If those planets in the 8th house are not making so many difficult aspects to other things, then it's not going to show a Platonic relationship necessarily. Whew, okay, that was a long list. So what actually happens in a Platonic relationship? The reason why we trace it back to the natal charts is because Pluto is that part of us that has a lot to do with our insecurities. And a lot of the times, you know, people in Platonic relationships are confronted with their own insecurities stemming from their own natal chart. And what happens in the Platonic relationship is that the people, if they are not willing, okay, to go back to themselves and solve some issues of insecurity, then they're going to try to control or manipulate or, in worst case, abuse or cause some violence within the partner that they're with because of their own insecurities, okay? So, you know, when it comes to Pluto and the Sun, This has a lot to do with self-esteem issues and issues of your own identity. And so if you're not secure within your self-esteem, you don't have a lot of self-confidence, you're going to do things in a relationship to control or manipulate your partner to gain a sense of self-confidence and self-esteem. If it's the moon, that has to do with your like emotional needs, just feeling safe in general, getting your needs met. If you don't know how to get your needs met by yourself, you're going to control, manipulate, or abuse the partner to get that. Venus and Pluto can be in terms of values and also resources. So if you're lacking something financially, or if you're not valuing yourself enough, you're going to control and manipulate the partner's resources, their money, take their things, in order to get that need met in yourself. If it's Pluto and Mars, that will have to do with your sexuality. If you're not in touch with your sexuality, or it can have a lot to do with your ego, if you are always needing other people to lift up your ego, right? Or maybe you have anger issues within yourself that you don't confront, then you're going to kind of be controlling or manipulating your partner to feel sexually wanted, to feel needed, and to have your ego met, okay? So the way that a platonic relationship is going to play out is, I kind of think of, I don't know if you've watched this series, but it's called Big Little Lies. It's directed by Nicole Kidman and starring Nicole Kidman. And Nicole Kidman in the movie, she's in a relationship, in a kind of an abusive relationship with her husband. So there was some kind of domestic violence going on in the home. That's kind of the undealt with extreme version of a platonic relationship, wherein her husband, Perry, has like a lot of insecurities within himself, and he does not like Nicole Kidman, who plays Celeste, he does not want her to leave him, and so he controls her through physical violence. And the reason why she stays with him is because Nicole Celeste within herself is too insecure to leave the relationship. So both people are attached to each other in an abusive and unhealthy way because they're too insecure to leave the relationship and to let go. So I'm guessing here that there's definitely some like Venus-Pluto going on within their relationship. There's probably also like Mars-Pluto going on because they're very much attracted to each other on a sexual level. It's like Perry needs Celeste in order for himself to feel like powerful as a husband. And whenever she kind of stands up to him, his ego, his male kind of more alpha male ego feels threatened because he doesn't have that secure within himself. Like without her to reaffirm his ego, it's almost like he would be insecure. So therefore he needs her to be the kind of the inferior person that he can dominate over. So Celeste never really has a chance to really stand up and speak up in the relationship. And Celeste within herself probably has some, maybe she has like a Sun-Pluto issue within herself, wherein her relationships with men are not healthy. She, kind of gets self-esteem by being with a more dominant partner, and so she doesn't have the kind of courage to leave Perry. And because if she leaves Perry, then she'll feel that she doesn't have her self-esteem anymore and she's lacking something, so she has to stay with him. And she goes to see a therapist, and she kind of like tells the therapist that, oh, like Perry's a really great husband. He takes care of the kids really well. He brings home the money. We have a really nice house. But like sometimes he hits me and things like that. But that's okay. But she's kind of like, that's okay. He's a really nice guy. And she still doesn't really see it. Because if she were to admit that to herself, then she knows that she has to leave him, and then she would feel insecure about it. So that's kind of how platonic relationships would play out. There's this underlying darkness. If you think about the myth of Hades and Persephone, Hades takes Persephone. Hades is of course the Pluto. Takes Persephone to live with him, and he abuses her, but she still stays with him. Anyways, So there's this feeling, if you're in one of these relationships, you're gonna feel a certain darkness to it. But at first it's gonna feel really, really intense and passionate. But it's this intensity and this passion is because this other person has the ability to satisfy all of your cravings. And that's why at the beginning of a platonic relationship, it feels like it's true love. But it's not. It's the ability for the other person to satisfy some of your needs. And so there can be this kind of obsessive and addictive quality in the relationship, okay? Like Celeste and Perry, where they can't leave each other, they keep coming back together, so it's kind of like has this addictive theme to it. But it's really, really unhealthy kind of a relationship. You know, at a certain time, after the two people have been together for a while, both of them, or sometimes one of them, is going to realize that this relationship is unhealthy, and they can feel that there's, you know, it depends on the planet again, but they can feel that either, you know, like their self-esteem has been ripped away from them, and this sense of self-love isn't there anymore. Like they've given that over to the other person who just took everything away from them. And that person that took everything away is usually the Pluto person. And sometimes, you know, it depends. Sometimes both people are taking from each other. Sometimes it's just one person taking from the other person. And when it becomes clear what's going on, one person is likely to feel a lot of resentments towards the Pluto person, who it can be the Pluto person. And when this happens, one person might really want to end the relationship, but the other person who plays more of the Pluto role will hang on really, really tightly because they can't let go. Pluto can't let go. So one person, you know, depending on the planet, either wants to run away or wants to fight for their freedom or things like that. But the Pluto person will stay and will say, oh, please forgive me, I'm gonna change. Or, you know, they might just be like, you're being ridiculous, nothing is wrong here, depending on what planets are involved. And so it's almost like the person who is not the Pluto has to rip themselves out of the relationship. And even if they do that, it can be a really big rip. So it can be like violence involved here, where they're kind of just like throwing things at each other, shouting in each other's faces, calling the police even, or things like that. But eventually it can end. But of course it doesn't have to get to that level, okay? It's just depending on, you know, each relationship is different. But basically it's really hard to break off a platonic relationship. So when the relationship does end, if it does, and sometimes maybe it doesn't end, what's actually behind all of this is transformation. That's what we're getting to with Pluto. A platonic relationship is asking both of the peoples to transform themselves completely, is asking for the both of the people to learn to let go through feeling secure within themselves. Because you see, if you are secure within yourselves, there is no need to hold on to another person. So this can either mean that it has escalated to an extreme level, like Celeste and Perry, where the person is being forced, or one person is being forced to love themselves so much, so badly, to really see their own self-worth, to know how to fight for their own life, that they don't need the other person anymore, and they learn to let the other person go. Or if it's not an extreme level, then, you know, the person can kind of learn to love themselves more, learn to cultivate security within themselves, but still be in a platonic relationship and have that going, because they're not forced to do it, but the two of them together, the two people together, can learn to cultivate that security within themselves together. But a lot of the times a platonic relationship is asking you to go back to childhood and see the source of the insecurity, because a lot of the times insecurity is stemming from, you know, mother or a father who didn't really give that to the child through, you know, either because the father was really controlling, the mother was controlling, or the mother had a lot of stress going on and the child had to kind of attend to the mother's stresses. And, you know, there can be a lot of things that happen within childhood that the child didn't get that security. And so now they are in a relationship and they are threatened by their partner to lose the security, so they hang on to the partner, okay? So therefore, in order to transform, whether that's forced transformation or whether that's smooth transformation, the relationship, a Plutonic relationship, is asking you to do some therapy, to do some emotional purging by, you know, doing inner child work, okay? So, you know, if someone is open to that, then and you know, the relationship doesn't escalate to the point where there is actual abuse, and the two people can, you know, do purging, do inner child work, go to therapy, and then still remain together. But if it has escalated to a point where there was actually some abuse or some manipulation that causes resentments, then the two people are most likely going to part ways, go to therapy, work on their stuff, do emotional purging, work on their stuff, and be better off going their separate ways. So I hope that kind of gave you guys some insight into a Plutonic relationship. If you're in one of these relationships, do leave a comment below. Let us know what your experiences have been. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And yeah, you know, I just think that at the end of the day, a Platonic relationship is really one of the interesting ways that we learn more about ourselves, and we learned to build strength within ourselves much better, build security and stability within ourselves much, much more. This is one of the main reasons for this kind of a relationship. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope I wasn't so serious in that video, but you know, yeah, Pluto can be kind of serious. So yeah, I will be back with more compatibility videos, doing some other kind of outer planet relationship type. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't. If you have, then thank you very much for coming along with us on these astrology growth journeys, learning, growing together, and having better relationships with the people around us. Have a beautiful day, all your beautiful souls. Bye!